Hi guys, this is Miss Galloway, and today what I'm going to do is a series of short lectures on the Iranian political system. If you are going to be out this week because of AP exams, hopefully this will help walk you through it. I would also throw out there that everything I'm about to talk about is in the reading, so for the love, please do the reading. Now, a couple of things before we get started. First of all, I didn't make this PowerPoint, as you can no doubt tell because of the absolutely terrible existence of dun dun dun. Hang on. Oh, come on, go back. I was trying to make a joke. Sorry. At any rate, there's Comic Sans over here, which usually I only threaten you with if you spoil me for Marvel movies, but this time it comes part and parcel with the PowerPoint, free of charge. So at any rate, yeah, this isn't my PowerPoint, but it does what we need it to do, and I'm lazy sometimes, and it's the end of the year, so you get what you get. All right, so in terms of the rundown for the government system here, the basics. Obviously, Iran is a theocratic republic. It is the only one on Earth that really operates on a grand scale. I mean, we can obviously talk about Vatican City being a theocracy, but like it's not even the size of North Cobb in terms of like its territory and population. So yeah, Iran is the only theocratic republic. It has a representative system of government. People vote, the elections do things. However, the theocracy part is the part we're really going to lean into here because that's the part, generally speaking, that most of us don't understand. So, there are four major components to the Iranian political system that are based upon theocratic principles, and that is the Supreme Leader, the Guardian Council, and the Assembly of Religious Experts, as well as the Expediency Council. Now, the Guardian Council and Expediency Council are easy to confuse, but don't, because they do very, very different things, okay? Now, all of these have some degree of theocratic background to them. When we get to the Majlis and the judiciary, technically they're supposed to be like outside of the theocratic structure, but obviously nothing can be because the whole system of government is based on theocracy. Now, Iran is a highly centralized unitary state, meaning that no provincial power, no municipal power exists without the say-so of the central state. That is, there are no reserved powers for provinces in Iran. There don't even have to be provinces in Iran. There's nothing that requires there be. The only reason they exist is because the central government allows them to exist. It's like the UK. Remember, the UK devolves power from its central parliament to establish national parliaments in places like Wales and Scotland and a national assembly in Northern Ireland. But those places don't have to have parliaments, and they can be easily retracted as a result. Now, Iran does have a dual executive system, meaning that the head of state is the supreme leader and head of government is president. Now, we're used to thinking about that in the terms of the UK, where the head of state is Queen Elizabeth II, and she waves at people and, like, waves at people. That's what she does. And she has no real authority, and that the head of government is where power really truly rests. But that's not how it works in Iran. And we'll get into why in a moment. Iran is also unique in that it is a unicameral legislative system, only one deliberative house, and that is the Majlis. There's only one other place that we've talked about that has a truly unicameral system, and that is China. China is a unicameral legislature. However, you could make the argument that it functions a little bit more like the UK because, first of all, the Majlis is a parliamentary legislative system, and the UK is as well. Additionally, in the UK, the only house that really matters in terms of deliberation is the House of Commons. House of Lords doesn't really do that much. Now, in Iran, the judiciary is not independent any way, shape, or form at all. The entire system is based on Sharia, which means that it is theocratic in its nature and that it is tied essentially to the Quran and Quranic interpretation, as well as the Hadith. So that means that there is no independence for judiciary. It's impossible for it to be independent in this system. Now, so this right here is our kind of rundown. Why is it highlighting over stuff? Sorry about that. This right here is a pretty decent rundown of how the system works in Iran. I know it says a pretty complex political system, but frankly, I find this one to be fairly understandable in terms of the diagram. So what we have here is first you have the voters in Iran, and there's universal suffrage in Iran. Anyone over the age of 18 who is an Iranian citizen is eligible to vote, and yes, that includes women. And voters can directly elect their representatives to parliament. Parliament, I'll get into this in a bit. The Mejlis operates on an SMD as well as multi-member district system. There are 28 multi-member districts in Iran, mostly in big cities. But people have local representatives, they elect them, and generally speaking, those elections, there's not a lot of ballot stuffing or intimidation at the ballot box. It's not as clean as we'd like, but, you know, it looks way better than Mexico did prior to 2000, so, you know, all things being equal, not terrible. Voters also directly elect the president, and there he is right there. That's Rouhani again. And they also elect people to a council called the Assembly of Religious Experts, and there are 86 members there, and people all around Iran get to elect them. Okay, now so there is participation in the system. However, there's not competition, and that's what really matters to us. Okay, so let's start with the Supreme Leader and what he can do. So the Supreme Leader is, by default, always going to be a man, and there's only ever been two of them, right? First of all, you had Ruhollah Khomeini from 1979 until his death in 1989, and since his death, we have had the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Okay, that name is real close to Khomeini, so careful that you get it right. Now, he is easily the most powerful political figure in Iran, and that is because of all of the constitutional powers he has, as well as his religious status. He is chosen by the clerics who make up the Assembly of Religious Experts. That is to say, he is chosen from amongst the religious body. Remember his title here, Ayatollah, is a religious title. It is indicative of sort of his religious status. Now, the Ayatollah here becomes supreme leader, and he is appointed for life. There is no resignation built in. It's not until you hit 83 and then you retire or something like that. And as you can see, he is getting a little old. Okay, now here's the thing. We only have two data points at this point. We have Khomeini and Khamenei, and at this point they're both old men, or one's dead. And the other's an old man. And so we don't really know what would happen if someone decided to step down, because no one has ever done that before. It's hard to extrapolate out a pattern. Now, the whole point of having the supreme leader is that he is supposed to act as a trustee for the state of Iran, for the religious community of Muslims within Iran. His job is to make sure that the state and the legal system essentially conform to the teachings and understandings of Shia Islam as he interprets it. That is, he represents the will of God on earth in Iran. This is something called the fiqh, and the fiqh is the notion of having learned scholars who understand the Quran and Hadith, supposed to be able to interpret religious meaning to keep sort of the country on the right path, all right? So that's the general notion. Now, the supreme leader is not the head of the executive branch or the judicial branch or the legislative branch. He's the head of all of them. He is the linchpin that pulls them all together. He doesn't belong to one branch or the other. He is all of the branches. He is the trunk, if you will. And his powers are massive. I mean, like, look at them all. Like, it's a huge number of powers. So, first of all, a couple of things you should know about him. He has the ultimate ability to approve or disapprove any presidential candidates who are put forth on the ballot. So nobody gets put down as a presidential candidate on the ballot without this guy's say-so. He also ultimately has the authority to overrule the president if the president makes a decision, vetoes something, etc., 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 and he can also dismiss him, dismiss him from office. So that is a remarkable amount of power right there. He is also directly in charge of the armed forces, particularly the Revolutionary Guard, which we will talk about later. He has the power to declare war and sign peace treaties. Usually those would be powers ascribed to a president, but not in Iran. He also has the ability to issue declarations for national referenda. That is, he can call for a vote in favor of something, like in favor, like asking a particular question to the electorate, or he can turn them down. He has to be the one to issue the decree. He also directly appoints the head of the judiciary, which is why the judiciary can't be independent, because it's tied to him. He also gets to appoint 6 of the 12 members to something called the Guardian Council, and I'll get into that in just a moment. And also, and this is something that I find very, very interesting, and it often gets overlooked, the supreme leader of Iran has the right to appoint Friday prayer leaders. That is, imams or clerics at major mosques all around Iran. He is the person who approves the clerics who essentially lead prayer. And it's not as though there's a formal sermon or like homily in the Catholic tradition, but generally speaking, the leader of the religious service at Friday prayers, generally speaking, reads Quranic verses and makes a few remarks about the nature of the interpretation of those verses, very similar to lots of other types of religious ceremonies. And what the supreme leader can and often does is gives guidance as to what verses should be examined and what the message should be that is given to various sort of worshippers at that moment. He also directly controls the head of radio and TV in the state-run industry in Iran, which means that he directly controls the media as well. Now, that is an incredible degree of sort of state penetration down to the individual level. I mean, think about it. You've got the radio and the television that are directly under the control of one person. Additionally, when people go to their place of worship, the message they're hearing is also essentially coming directly from him. That's an incredible amount of power for one person to have. Now, the Guardian Council, okay? I'm going to get started here and then probably have to stop and create another video on it. But the Guardian Council is essentially a group of 12 men. It's always going to be wow, I'm tired. It's always going to be male because of the legal requirements for it. Additionally, it has a lot to do with the fact that they have to be religious experts, and those are going to be men. They are appointed to serve a 6-year term on the council, and there are always 6 clerical members and 6 lay members. That is 6 members who are expert in law and 6 members who are expert in religious matters. Now, the notion is that they kind of balance each other, their expertise in religion versus law. But the fact is that they're all going to have some expertise in religion because the legal system is based on Sharia, which is a theocratic system. Additionally, the 6 lawyers are not independently appointed. They're recommended by the head of the judiciary, but that person is appointed by the supreme leader, and the judiciary has to be approved by, not the judiciary, the lay members, the legal members of the Guardian Council have to be approved by Parliament. However, as we'll see, Parliament isn't fully independent either. Now, the Guardian Council is extremely powerful and in some ways acts as an executive. It has the power to veto any legislation. Now, the notion here is that it is supposed to veto legislation if Parliament passes a law that is somehow in conflict with a basic notion of Islam, particularly their interpretation of Shia Islam. So their job is to go through legal decisions and determine whether or not it adheres to their interpretation of Sharia and the Quran. And if it doesn't, it is vetoed. It is not passed down to the Majlis to be overturned by a 2/3 vote like it normally would in lots of other places. Here, a veto is a veto is a veto. If it's vetoed, you have to start all over and create a new piece of legislation. But for me, one of the most important things that the Guardian Council can do is vet political candidates. The Guardian Council has the right to determine everybody who gets to run for any election in Iran. That is, you can't run for dog catcher in Tehran without these guys' approval. So I'm going to stop here, okay? And then I'm going to move on to the next video.